Coming up on Primetime News, a massive earthquake in Nepal kills more than 3,500 in its wake. The death toll is expected to climb further as recovery efforts continue. President Park Geun-hye accepts Prime Minister Lee Wan-koo's resignation over his suspected involvement in a high-profile bribery scandal. Plus, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe kicks off his visit to the United States while pressure mounts for an apology over his country's past wartime atrocities. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Welcome to Primetime News on this Monday, April 27th. I'm Hwang Ji-hye.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us.
We begin in Nepal, still reeling from one of its strongest earthquakes in 81 years.
Right. At least 3,600 people are confirmed dead in Nepal and more than 6,500 are injured, and that number is sure to rise as the search for bodies continues. Thousands of survivors are camping outside on the streets of Kathmandu after countless buildings and historical sites were leveled. Outside the capital, rescue workers are struggling to reach remote regions of the country. And the 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck just before noon on Saturday and was followed by numerous aftershocks, including a powerful one that hit Sunday.
The underground plate that shook Nepal also sent tremors through neighboring countries like India, China, Tibet, and Bangladesh, and reports of those affected are still coming in. Staying with the crisis, the Korean government dispatched a search and rescue team to Nepal today.
And Korea also plans to send another at the end of the week, joining a growing number of countries and aid agencies pledging quake relief. Our Shin Se-min has this report.
The survivors are exhausted after sleeping outdoors in the tent cities that have sprung up around the capital of Kathmandu. Most of them have either been displaced or are afraid their homes will collapse as strong aftershocks from the quake that struck Saturday continue to rock the nation of nearly 28 million. The people are in desperate need of shelter, food, clean drinking water, and electricity, and medical supplies are running low. The Korean government stepped up its response to the crisis on Monday by dispatching a team of rescue workers. An advance team of 15 left for Nepal Monday evening, while a second group of 30 is scheduled to depart Friday. This in addition to the $1 million in aid Korea has already pledged. Help is coming from around the globe. UN spokeswoman Orla Fagan left for Nepal Sunday to help combat possible outbreaks of disease like measles. Canada, France, Pakistan, and the United Arab Emirates have also pledged aid. Britain said it is delivering supplies and a rescue team, while Pakistan is sending military aircraft loaded with medical supplies, a necessity for a country where hospitals are being overwhelmed. The U.S. also sent a military plane loaded with supplies and disaster response personnel. But getting to Nepal at this point is also proving to be a challenge. There's just one international airport that's been shut down frequently due to the aftershocks. Meanwhile, many remote regions, most of them impoverished, are left to fend for themselves as landslides and aftershocks hamper rescue efforts. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Moving on to local politics, once seen as a potential frontrunner for the next presidency, Korea's Prime Minister Lee Wan-koo officially stepped down from his post today following allegations of his involvement in a bribery scandal. Kwon So-ah reports.
Just a little over 2 months. That's how long, or short, Prime Minister Lee Wan-koo's term lasted. Monday evening, Lee gave his resignation speech at Seoul's government complex, at times with tears.
I want to say goodbye to you today. I am very sorry for causing concerns over the recent situation.
He also said his departure comes with a heavy heart for leaving so many things unfinished and not completing his duties. President Park Geun-hye wasted no time in approving his step down after returning from her South America trip Monday. Lee tendered his resignation last week while the president was away due to mounting pressure across political lines. The former prime minister is one of 8 ruling Saenuri Party politicians listed on an alleged bribery note left by late businessman Song Wan-jong, who committed suicide earlier this month. Whoever succeeds Lee as the next prime minister is in for a tough ride, as President Park already had a difficult time finding the right replacement for her first prime minister, Chung Hong-won. In the meantime, Deputy Prime Minister Choi Kyung-wan will serve as acting prime minister until the position is filled. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And turning now to the latest in the high-profile bribery scandal, prosecutors are questioning another aide to the late businessman at the center of it all, Song Wan-jong, this Monday. The aide, identified only by his surname Chung, is being grilled on his knowledge of the bribery allegations and whether he hid or destroyed evidence. Chung worked for the late businessman from 2012 to 2014, when Song was a Saenuri Party lawmaker. Chung served alongside Lee Yong-gi, another aide who was arrested last week on charges of destroying evidence. Going forward, prosecutors also plan to summon the aides of 8 high-profile Conservative Party politicians accused of taking kickbacks from Song. The names of the 8, including Prime Minister Lee Wan-koo, were found on a list left behind by Song, who committed suicide earlier this month.
The April 29th by-elections are right around the corner, and 4 seats are up for grabs. There are independent candidates in the running, but the event is largely being seen as a showdown between the ruling Saenuri Party and the New Politics Alliance for Democracy, or NPAD.
So, what's all the noise about when there are so few seats being contested? For a closer look at the significance of this race and more, we have Professor Han Kyu-sup from Seoul National University joining us in the studio. Professor Han, thank you for making time for us today.
Thank you for having me.
So the results of the by-election are expected to have some lasting implications for both parties. Could you tell us how this contest could affect local politics in the near future?
Okay, I think there are two possible scenarios that could have a lasting impact. One is that if the opposition party loses all 4 elections, I think that will be a significant blow to the Moon Jae-in's leadership, and it might actually even start some discussions about forming a new opposition party. The other possible scenario is that if Saenuri wins at least 3 of the 4 races, aside the one in Gwangju, obviously, it's difficult for the Saenuri to win. But if Saenuri wins 3 of the 4 races, I think it will be a huge boost to the Park Geun-hye administration.
Well, actually, overshadowing the elections for the headlines is actually the Song Wan-jong bribery list scandal at the moment, and it's probably having some destructive effects on both sides. But could you perhaps tell us about how it is affecting the support for either sides at the moment?
Well, at the moment, I think initially a lot of people expected this to be a huge problem for the Saenuri Party, but I think a lot of people now realize that it's actually affecting both parties almost equally, because a lot of people understand that this is not a problem that's peculiar to either one of the 2 parties. The other direction that this is actually affecting the election is that because this was such an overwhelming event leading up to the elections, basically a lot of people had no interest in the elections and so on and so forth. So that's probably going to affect the turnout.
But President Park Geun-hye has been waging a battle against corruption, and I guess that scandal was factoring in her political slogan. And how will the results of the by-election actually impact the president's political reform drive?
Well, I think that's sort of hard to see right now, because it's kind of a weird situation, because President Park actually initiated this reform movement efforts, but it actually backfired on her administration at the moment. And so if the Saenuri Party actually wins or does relatively well in these upcoming elections, it will probably allow President Park to continue with the sort of justifies her efforts to pursue this reform movement.
Right, going back to that, it seems like most of the opposition party members, at one time or another, they've thought about or they decide to get out and start their own or turn their back on the party that they used to belong to. Why is this a continuing trend, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, it's because of the composition of the opposition party. And the only thing that's, keeping them together is that if they believe that they're better off unified, right, then they will stick together. If the current leadership of the opposition party is seen as weak, and if their chances of winning the next general election and the upcoming the presidential election and so on and so forth, then a lot of people, members of the opposition party, will obviously have to start thinking about other options. So I think that's the sort of the main sort of mechanism underlying the what's happening.
So when the going gets tough, they tend to look for the exit.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And so that's really going back to the first question, where they could actually create a new party following the elections, right, Professor?
Yes, absolutely. So in that sense, the by-elections is extremely important.
All right, thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you.
During our visits to Colombia, Peru, Chile, and Brazil, President Park Geun-hye sealed dozens of deals that are expected to pave the way for Korea to diversify economic cooperation with the region. Our Choi Yoo-sun reports.
Korea's presidential office says President Park's South America tour has helped Korea diversify its cooperative partnerships with the region beyond trade. It also found ways to join the two sides' innovation-led growth initiatives for future co-prosperity. Marking the first joint local production of Korea's trainer jet, the KT-1P with Peru, President Park said the two sides should focus more on win-win partnerships.
페루가 추진 중인 다목적 고등훈련기 사업 등 다양한 분야에서 필요한 협력을 지속해 나가기로 하였습니다.
With South America severely lacking medical personnel and services, Korea signed deals with Peru, Chile, and Brazil to help them develop their telemedicine services, including a smart hospital vessel. This in turn is expected to offer Korean medical equipment manufacturers a better chance to launch their business in the region's $11 billion telemedicine market. Securing deals with all four countries' e-commerce associations and major distribution companies, Korea expects to better benefit from its FTAs and increase related exports to $3 billion in 5 years.
지구 반대편이라는 물리적 거리를 해소하기 위해서는 온라인 기반의 교육 시스템 활성화가 필요합니다.
Korea will also work with Chile and Brazil to support their startups and assist job seekers, as well as increase exchanges between their young people. President Park's trip has taken Korea a step closer to winning various infrastructure projects in the region, each worth billions of dollars, such as Colombia's subway construction and Peru's river restoration. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is now on his U.S. tour, the highlight of which will be his landmark address to a joint session of Congress on Wednesday. One of the big questions for many watching in this region is whether his remarks include an apology for Japan's wartime atrocities. Kim Hyun-bin has more.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has kickstarted his week-long U.S. tour in Boston as he looks to strengthen Tokyo-Washington ties. Upon his arrival Sunday, Abe had dinner with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. The Japanese leader is scheduled to visit the site of the Boston Marathon bombing and give lectures at Harvard University and MIT on Monday. After that, he sets off to Washington for summit talks with U.S. President Barack Obama on Tuesday and a highly anticipated speech to U.S. Congress the following day. All eyes are on whether Abe will use the historic occasion to issue a long overdue apology for Japan's atrocities during World War II. Abe's lack of genuine remorse for his country's actions has caused Tokyo's relations with Seoul and Beijing to dip to new lows in recent years. Prior to Abe's visit, 25 U.S. congressmen sent a joint letter urging him to address history issues. Mainstream U.S. media like the New York Times have also said Abe's success in the U.S. will depend on how he confronts Japan's past wrongdoings. Relations between Korea and Japan have been strained for years, as Tokyo refuses to accept Korea's demand that it formally apologize and compensate the Korean victims of Japan's wartime system of sexual slavery. Despite intense pressure, there are indications Abe is unlikely to issue an apology during his time in the U.S., meaning Seoul-Tokyo ties will continue to remain frosty. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
The ruling Assembly Party and the government have agreed Monday to fast-track a series of long-stalled bills to help improve human rights in North Korea. They're aiming for June if they fail to reach a compromise next month. The bills have been pending in the Parliamentary Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee since 2005 due to bipartisan differences over their content. One of the most contentious bills includes a proposal to fine South Korean civic groups that fly anti-North Korea leaflets across the border. It's gained support from the ruling party, but the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is against it. Some lawmakers argue that passage of the bill would unnecessarily stir up inter-Korean tensions. And South Korea approves a civic request to send aid to North Korea for the first time in 5 years. Though there are still heavy economic sanctions imposed on the regime, the latest move signals that inter-Korean relations may be turning a corner. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
Seoul's Unification Ministry gave the green light for Ace Kyung-an, the foundation run by South Korean bandmaker Ace, to visit North Korea to set up greenhouses there. The group will cross the border by car on Tuesday and return on Saturday. The plan includes a provision of 15 tons of fertilizer to the north, along with materials needed to build greenhouses, like vinyl and pipes, for a total value of roughly $186,000. The ministry says it may also consider allowing other private aid groups to provide fertilizer to the north, but says inter-Korean relations could be a factor in the decision. The delivery of aid related to the agriculture and forestry sectors comes after a speech made by President Park Geun-hye in Dresden last year, where she outlined a plan for achieving a breakthrough in frosty inter-Korean relations. Seoul has banned fertilizer aid to North Korea since it imposed heavy economic sanctions on the regime following Pyongyang's torpedo attack on a South Korean warship in 2010. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
North Korea has opened up about the ongoing wage tussle at the inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex. It says the economic relationship between the two Koreas won't last long if only one side is making a profit. Pyongyang made the claims on Monday, citing an academic journal article it published in February before unilaterally raising the minimum wage for North Korean workers at Kaesong by 5% to $74 a month. The article said the two Koreas must come up with a fair principle and a common purpose for a balanced development of the complex. North Korea also took credit for allowing South Korean companies to use part of its land almost free of charge. Experts in Seoul say North Korea appears to be dissatisfied with its current profit earnings from that complex. And now let's move on to other topics, some lighter topics. The last Wednesday of the month here in Korea is a very special occasion known as Culture Day.
It's a day when cultural facilities throughout the country, including museums, galleries, and movie theaters, offer special discounts or hold various events to promote culture and arts. With another Culture Day coming up on Wednesday, the Culture Ministry says that this month's event will feature nearly 1,800 programs nationwide for people of all ages.
And that's the highest number yet, and more than twice the number of events in January of last year, the program's first month. It's time to take a look at the top headlines, this time from around the world with our Hwang Ji-hye.
Our focus today, rescue operations continue on Mount Everest. Israeli airstrikes hit Syria, and the U.S. Supreme Court reviews a historic case on gay marriage.
Paul, let's first touch on the crisis in Nepal. Not only did the earthquake devastate the heart of the country, but also hit Mount Everest.
That's right. Nearly 1,000 climbers and Sherpas were on Everest when the quake struck, trailing the deadliest avalanche on the world's highest mountain. On Monday, rescue helicopters continued evacuating stranded victims at camps 1 and 2, which had been completely cut off by the wave of ice and snow. One of the survivors, Michael Churton, a documentary filmmaker from New York, was at 17,000 feet when tragedy struck.
It's a big ice shelf, and it must have just released. We saw it hit. It kind of hits wood level, and then it just shot right back up. And then I saw, so I told the group to get down. It was like 4,000 feet of snow just kind of coming, and there's nowhere to run.
Authorities say at least 18 people have been killed in the disaster. Despite good weather, search efforts have been delayed due to aftershocks, which have caused more avalanches in the Himalayas. Many had traveled to Nepal recently to take part at the start of the annual climbing season. And shifting to the Middle East, Israel says it has killed 4 militants on its border with Syria in an effort to halt a terrorist attack. A military spokesman said Sunday that an Israeli aircraft shot and killed the group while they were placing an explosive on a fence near the Golan Heights. The territory was captured and annexed by Israel after its 1967 conflict with Syria. Despite the ceasefire line, both countries are still officially at war. And turning to China, major sandstorms are sweeping across the northwest of the country as it faces one of its worst bouts of yellow dust in over a decade. Weather authorities in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region say visibility dropped to less than 100 meters. Waves of sand and dust turned the sky yellow on Monday morning, while pushing temperatures below seasonal norms. The Chinese Weather Bureau forecasts the dusty weather to begin tapering off tomorrow. And finally, the U.S. Supreme Court is set to hear a historic case on Tuesday over the legality of same-sex marriages. The 9 justices will review arguments over an appeal that upheld gay marriage bans in 4 states, including Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Advocates for and against same-sex unions protested in Washington over the past 2 days. Socialist conservative groups say it's an issue the government should stay out of.
We simply think that the government should not actively affirm, celebrate, and subsidize those relationships by redefining marriage, and should not be actively punishing the people who happen to disagree or disapprove of homosexual conduct.
The decision from this case will represent more than 20 years of litigation over the issue. Political watchers say the Supreme Court is on the verge of declaring gay marriage legal across the country amid a dramatic shift in public opinion towards equality over the last decade. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
With May just around the corner, the weather is rapidly heating up. Some regions saw temperatures soaring season highs, peaking near 30 for Donghae City and mid-20s for the capital area. Feeling more like July this afternoon, but southern provinces will get some relief from the heat as moderate rain is in the forecast for tomorrow. But northern regions will continue to feel hot and sunny. So let's take a closer look at the readings for tomorrow. The mercury will climb from 13 to 26 here in Seoul tomorrow, while Daegu and Gwangju will have a tad cooler day with highs peaking to 25 and 24, and Busan hits 20 tomorrow afternoon. And as for the other regions, Daejeon and Jeju see a high of 26 and 22, while Dokdo tops out at 20. Now it's going to remain warm this week with highs remaining in the mid-20s in the capital, and May is expected to have temperatures that are warmer than this seasonal averages. Well, that's Korea for you, and here is a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for staying with us. This has been Daniel Choy.
And I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Do join us at the same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.